All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bad Luck Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
Hello, hello.
And welcome to the final stream for the year. We have the holidays coming up. Next Thursday, I think, is the day after Christmas.
It is.
And then we don't even have another Thursday after that in the year. The Thursday after that is January 2nd. And for many who may not know, I put a notification on the channel earlier, but my daughter is going to be born sometime in the next, 3 to 4 weeks. And it's going to be a lot. So the channel is going to go on a brief hiatus for the month of January and most of February, if not all of February. Hopefully things will get back in order around March, but who knows? I've never had a baby. This is my firstborn, so, you know. Also, hi, Muriel Moria. And thanks, Eps.
Yeah, it's the important thing, you know. The hope be March, hope be late February, but the priority is that both of you are in the best position possible. Everything is going well. There's a lot of priorities that have to come in first.
It's not even like a priority. Because a priority implies there's a choice, and I don't think there'll be a choice.
No, there's not a choice.
I will be a half living person for at least a little bit, maybe.
Yes.
We'll see. She could be a very quiet baby. Who knows? Also, thank you, Zarek.
Sleeps and doesn't scream all the time. That would be great. I would hope that. I hope you get sleep.
Hopefully. I was a quiet baby, so we'll see.
I know I wasn't, so surprisingly I was a handful.
Surprisingly, yeah.
I don't know how anybody could have guessed otherwise.
Yeah, lots of girls. I'm noticing a lot of girls. I just, because I had this weird moment. We went to the county fair this last summer, and I'm gonna be we discovered we were pregnant, so I was just kind of looking around at all the young children and everything, mostly women. I don't know if it's the area or something like that, but I'm noticing a lot of girls as of late. So who knows? It's an interesting thing to notice. I've seen some little boys too. I'm not saying there's no boys. I'm just saying I've seen a lot of girls. A lot of people I know have girls. My family has currently, in my generation, four natural born girls and then one adopted young girl so far. No boys yet. So it's got a lot of girls. And my generation also, I have one boy cousin on both sides, and then I have minimum minimum now 4 girl cousins on both sides. So I have 2 boy cousins and 8 girl cousins.
See, my problem is that I have a lot of relatives, a lot of them.
Being Mormon.
Yeah, just Mormon family.
Yeah.
On both sides. So yeah. There's a lot of aunts and uncles, and a lot of them fall by the wayside because they live in other places, and I'm bad enough keeping into contact with people. So I have a core few that I talk to all the time, and a core few that I like being around that as well. And a lot of people that I am in contact with are out of the age of having kids. They had kids well on in their lives. And so my cousins are 10 years older than me. And only a couple have had kids recently. By 1 or 2. So there are not a lot of small children in my extended family. I think the youngest that we have right now is a toddler, and then the second youngest is I think 8 or 9.
Yeah, the youngest member of my family up until this point, I think, is 14. It's my youngest cousin, I believe. She might be even younger than that. She's really tall. She's almost as tall as I am.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her mom's really, really tall.
Yeah, they'll do it.
But like on the Johnson side, there's not a lot of hope for children. I have one cousin who's currently in the process of trying, but there's been some complications. And then like my sister is married to a woman, so having kids is incredibly hard. And one of my other cousins just wasn't able to find anyone soon enough, and she's already like getting close to her 40s, and it's probably a little unsafe at this point. So it's just kind of me. It's just kind of me on one side of the family, and then on my dad's side of the family, there's a lot more who are, you know, have kids already or are going to be having kids. But
yeah,
so today's stream, we're going to be talking about like some of the things we talked about over the year, and kind of where the channel's been, and some hopes for the channel. There's some really, really cool stuff just right around the corner. Next year's insane for tabletop. And also like just talking about like some stuff that Alex is doing on his channel. You know, the Trench Crusade stuff has been taken off, and your channel's been accelerating. I looked recently, and you're like exactly 1,000 subs away from me now, and I'm sweating because
oh shit,
I started probably like 3K above at one point, and it no longer is the case.
Yeah, I know the metrics keep showing that like end of February is when I'm gonna cross the 10K threshold.
Yeah, mine says like July or something like that. But we'll see. YouTube is very rarely linear. And
no, it's super fluctuating. The only thing that's been like keeping my social blade actually accurate is the fact that like for some reason, well, it's mainly because I have like a core set of videos bringing people in, and because of that, it's very regular. So it's been like actually pretty accurate data. It just keeps changing slightly, like what day it says I'm gonna reach 10K.
Yeah. My sub number has definitely been, which it's been very weird because my projected sub numbers are kind of low, but my projected view numbers are pretty good, competitive even with a lot of like the higher Paizo creators and stuff like that. So if anything, that's the only thing that matters is your views when it comes to YouTube. But
yeah, so there's a lot of people that will watch all your stuff because no one uses a subscription page really. Like it's all the homepage stuff.
Yeah,
like that's there are plenty of channels that you might watch and just be like, yeah, I thought I was subscribed, which is why, you know, the subscribe call out things work.
Yeah,
statistically.
But we'll see. Next year, I think will definitely be a really good year because of the sheer number of like TTRPGs just releasing to some major acclaim, you know, like the Cosmere RPG, which had a big like set of news come out recently. Some new look into some of the new classes and stuff like that, which is very, very hype.
Oh, did they just drop some new stuff like now?
It was like yesterday or the day before, something like that.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I get emails because I backed it.
Ah, that's why. I just was gonna buy the PDF when it drops. So I'm like, I just wanted the PDF and I didn't have the money at the time.
Yeah,
oh,
Bill,
that's
you know,
sick.
A lot of people also like Lancer. I feel like is one of those games that would be very, very popular if it just had better media presence. So, you know.
Yeah, I know they're working on a lot of other games right now too.
Yeah, yeah, which I don't necessarily agree with that kind of plan, but some people just can't like stick to a singular project for an extensive period of time.
I know the like one of the creators, Orbital Dropkick specifically, has talked about like there's some people on like Reddit, for example, be it as they are in any situation, very angry at him because of the fact he hasn't just been endlessly making Lancer content. And he's saying like, no, the point of Lancer was like a side thing that we're all doing in accordance of a lot of other side things. Like like that was always the point, is it drops,
Right.
you release stuff occasionally, and like that's kind of it. And it's the same for every other game they do.
Right.
And it's like, all right, that's a fair enough mentality. I kind of respect the whole like, you drop a banger, you maybe drop a thing or two, and then you like, all right, if we iterate too hard on this, we might kill it. We might make this worse.
I don't think that's why they're doing it. I don't think they're afraid.
I don't think so either.
I think it's just the kind of creator orbital dropkick is like they always have to like be working on some new project. That's kind of where they get like a lot of their excitement from.
And so, like the other stuff they've been working on is very cool. Like that very like Chainsaw Man style like horror game, like Sign or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks so cool. I gotta be real. I really like how the power system looks like it works.
For sure. And to be honest as well, TTRPGs don't make a lot of money, so hyper investing into TTRPGs is not necessarily like even financially viable. So
no, like that's always the sad fact of it. And like, but still, I always like the ability to make something updated a little bit and like then kind of leave it at that. And I always look at it from that perspective, only for the fact of, as a person who has a really bad difficulty of iterating endlessly until a project is kind of ruined. A little bit of that perfectionism I have. A trait I had to kick once I started having, deadlines and stuff to work on.
Right.
So when it like, whenever I see like the one time, like this is not being turned into a franchise project, I'm like, okay, cool. Based.
It's funny too, because for me, I have a distinct problem of I don't like to do things that I feel aren't going to go anywhere. And so I'm always willing to try something new and like release a new thing, a new type of video and everything like that. But then it's like, okay, I did this. It did okay. If I keep doing this thing, I don't foresee it having any major impact. So I'm just going to try something else, which is bad because it's like it doesn't build momentum on things that are currently being done or worked on. So it's hard doing creative work in general, especially because success isn't based on even how well you do things. It's just based on how much you're willing to kind of like draw people in to your content, right? So if you're not focusing completely on like trying to get eyes on your content, then you're creating based on just whether or not people are gonna by chance come across your stuff. Like there's a lot of channels I see, the many discourse channels out there with constant titles like "And It Just Got Worse," talking about nothing but drama, talking about nothing about how bad Critical Role is or something like that. And like all they're doing is just farming that attention span for like any kind of new drama or new whatever. And the channels never last like super long and they never really get super far. And the creators always burn out eventually because it's like that seems really hard to do, to keep fabricating, problems everywhere you go. Like I can't imagine that's a positive way to live a life at all. Just constantly looking and talking about negative things.
Like if you can separate yourself fully from that, like I imagine that's the only way you can. Because like if you're a person that truly like actually cares about the subjects you're talking about, and then like you're getting like passionately into the drama of your subjects, that sounds like a nightmare. And the other alternative is not great either, to be completely honest. You're churning out slop content for a niche hobby. but you're doing it in that dispassionate way of like you don't actually like care about it. You don't care about the subjects involved. You are doing it because it brings in money. And like you don't actually care, for example, who Matthew Mercer is.
Right.
But you know he brings in click.
Yeah, you know when you put his face on your thumbnail and give him red eyes, people are gonna click on your content.
And like, yeah, like it's not great. It's not a good alternative. Like, one is a bit like both are draining. I don't know which one might be worse, but both are bad.
You know, and it's not to say that those kind of channels can't also offer something. It's not to say that, you know, those kind of channels also can't have really good content seated in the mix. But I feel like a lot of the TTRPG field is plagued by the fact that we're playing a game that is mostly about imagination and narrative gaming and not like competitive or even like overly accessible at all. And so it's just like, if you're a D&D content creator, well, hopefully you're making a meme channel or a channel talking about broken things in D&D, and you haven't already touched on all the broken things in D&D, in which case maybe D&D horror stories, because
Yeah,
people love that kind of stuff, you know.
And then you just call it like it's tabletop horror story. You title it like D&D horror stories, and then funny enough, there's a lot of those stories that like aren't even like for D&D, which I've listened to, and I'm like, yeah, that's a horror story from Vampire. Yeah,
right.
A horror story. I've heard like a anima horror story once. So I was like, Whiplash. I was like, anima beyond fantasy? Like that's a random poll. Like, all right.
So, you know, like, it's like it's genuinely difficult, because if you step out of your 2024 reviving D&D channels, has it? Honestly, I've been seeing quite the opposite. It feels like D&D channels have not been really doing anything with D&D 2024.
I think a lot of people just don't care, and is the problem. And like the most I've seen coverage-wise is people talking about some of the new content in comparison and being like, "Oh no, they bricked it. Like this sucks in comparison." And I see a lot of people more being like, "Okay, this is still backwards compatible."
Yeah, I'm looking through now, and I don't know. It's a lot of the same stuff that's been before that is showing up, at least on my feed. And not necessarily seeing any kind of big boom, but I don't know, maybe, you know, I'm not subscribed to a lot of the channels, so I'm not seeing it a ton for sure. Coming in 2025 then. Yeah, I mean, D&D 2024 was the biggest letdown of all time, and genuinely hurt the TTRPG scene, which is wild, because it's like they just released the same game with some minor tweaks, and it's like, I don't know how they would have expected anyone to get excited about that or anything. So, you know, people have been losing interest because the game has been the same for a decade. Like, they released one new class that didn't even come back in 2024. You know, and it's like the game that everyone likes. So it's just like, if the one game that's bringing people into TTRPGs isn't doing things that are exciting people, then people are just not going to be excited with TTRPGs. And that's tragic that we have to put so much weight into WotC's hands when it comes to our hobby.
Yeah, and like, honestly, I think that if anything, D&D's popularity wouldn't be like taking a hit. If anything, what might take a hit with D&D 2024 is the money going into tabletop and mainly going into Wizards of the Coast hands, because like I can't imagine they got like as much money as they were hoping for.
It doesn't seem like it.
Because like you're essentially being like, hey guys, want to buy the same game again?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a bad pitch. But like, it's also the thing we were anticipating, because you can't really do a new D&D with like, because 5e, they locked in on a perfect business model, and that's like their thing. But the problem is it's hard to monetize tabletop games. And then once they're that long, and if stuck around for that long, it's even harder to monetize it, because that's a book. Once you buy the book, you don't need to buy more content. That's why I kept being like, subscription model, here we go. D&D Beyond, that's why they were pushing so hard for it. And like, and then you're saying, all right, book time. It's the same game. It's the exact same.
Right.
And then everyone online is like, just play the old one.
Like, that's the thing though. Like, people are hungry for more content. People go to the Dungeon Guild, and they look up like third-party content for D&D all the time. Like, all WotC had to do was just release small, like 30-page books on like a new class and maybe some new fun features. Like, the thing is too, it doesn't even have to fit neatly into their game. It didn't even have to be modular in like a real way. It's just like, hey, we introduced this new system. Does it blend well with the core game? Nope. But you can use it, and people will just do that anyway, because most people just homebrew 90% of the game. So, you know, they just had to release a small bit with like a new class every few months and like charge $5 for it. And a bunch of people would buy that shit. A metric ton of people would, and they would be happy to, because it's official content.
Like, I can't imagine what they might be thinking of Paizo's release schedule, if anything. But I also am purely like, my opinion fully changed that one time we were looking into it and found that single conference where I always get them mixed up, the two faces of it, Pitchford and Jeremy Crawford. But
Right.
One of them was saying, like, talking about straight up, we are scared to design new things after Mystic.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's the reason. And then immediately going into, okay, we feel safe designing, like changing some of the rules because you guys liked what Baldur's Gate 3 did. And it's like
Right.
that. I was so right. I was the whole time. I'm like, they are scared to add things and change things because they're worried people will hate it and not give them money. And that's 100% what was happening. They were terrified to like alter the game at all because then the money might go away. Or if it's not the like WotC, it is Hasbro doing that. They're like, you can't alter the game, you can't add stuff. What if they hate it? And then they made Mystic. That might have been like the one last hurrah, like let's make something really interesting, and everybody hated it. And so like that's that. Then like right after that, they completely stopped designing new stuff. So I think they're kind of feeling stuck like fully, and that's awful. That's so lame.
Yeah, I don't know. I can only imagine that's just purely incompetence, because no industry thrives without any kind of innovation. So it's like, that's just business 101.
It shouldn't.
You know,
like it shouldn't prosper, but I think that's the thing that they're pushing really, really hard for D&D Beyond. Because if anything's gonna like keep going with D&D Beyond, it's the fact that like the most convenient way to play their game is a subscription service with a honestly very handy online tool. So like that tool is super useful. It charges a price, and then you have to buy all the books for online service, and then you're giving them money every single month. And so like because of that, they can perpetually siphon money for D&D, and that number is going to keep growing because it's always going to require at least one person having all of the book content and all, like having a D&D Beyond subscription to do that for like run a game. And it's having used D&D Beyond with like a person who has a subscription, it's genuinely super handy and like works really well. So I think that it's gonna last a little longer than another game might do, but that would be the only thing that helps it prevent some stagnation, is the fact that they can just siphon more money from subscription-based model.
Yeah, I don't know. It's what's definitely obvious is public opinion of D&D has been fading with time. There's been no real hype, and it's something that like when it loses it's kind of like in fashion status, which it's definitely starting to feel like it is. They're not going to be able to keep the same market share that they've been hoarding for the last like decade. And I feel like especially with that, people will feel less motivated to play the game and feel more motivated to look for other games. So like, despite all that being still at the top, I feel like they're definitely losing out on a lot of money that they definitely could have been easily keeping if they just worked on the game like at all.
They are 100% losing that. Like, the way I see it, I think there's two possible like responses, like not as like two total. I can just see two possibilities happening. I can see at some point in the future, because I don't see WotC changing in anytime soon, I can see some very dedicated like fan homebrewers taking it upon themselves to design a new edition for D&D.
They are. That's two big games coming out next year.
Yeah.
That's like Draw Steel and is it DC 20? Or am I confusing
that was the old name of it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Draw Steel and DC 20.
Yeah.
Matt Colville, who is a big guy in the D&D scene, he's doing Draw Steel, and then can't remember who the other guy is, but another big like person in the field is doing DC 20. So
and is that being directly kind of marketed as like the next D&D, like D&D 60? Good, because then that'd be my already
not like directly
idea.
D&D 60, but like the like Matt Colville's whole thing is like, this is the culmination of all my work and trying to like make my own D&D game essentially. And the DC 20 guy, I haven't looked too much into it to be honest, but his framework is very much like, hey, if you like D&D, you're going to love DC 20 because it's just D&D but better.
Okay, because I can see that framework, because the way I'm picturing is a lot more like, hey, we made the best homebrew pack, essentially pre-bought pack, mod pack kind of vibe, and then say it's like better D&D 2024 or something. I could see somebody designing that, and honestly, that could easily just be those two. Will it overtake D&D in like the marketplace of people playing it? I don't know.
I don't think
one thing I at least see continuing happening is people playing 5th edition. I don't think will stop for a very long time. WotC making money off of D&D, I think, is going to falter, only because just I don't see the mentality and the culture around absolutely shaping 5th edition to be any other game instead of playing another TTRPG, like changing, which makes me sad. Instead of like, the guys, I want to play a cyberpunk like cool game. If only there was a TTRPG for that. Anyways, Dungeons and Dragons. I made a cool homebrew. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't see that changing for a while.
I don't know. I think I might disagree on the fact that like many of the main heads for D&D are changing out soon. I believe Jeremy Crawford is retiring soon. And what I think they're going to do is the same thing that a lot of businesses tend to do after their market starts stagnating for a few too many years, is they're going to do like a sudden big shakeup with some new faces that, if it fails, all they have to do is just bring back D&D remastered with the old game that's been like actually improved, and then we might see like a big shakeup. I think because like in a lot of industries, like a lot of industries are pretty rigid to change until the money stops coming in. And I feel like the money's going to start really not coming in for WotC. And so with some of the heads kind of moving out and everything like that, bringing new people in to make these big sweeping changes that the company can easily scapegoat and be like, hey, we hired these people, but obviously they weren't interested, so we're going to take them out. We're going to bring some new people in, and we're going to remaster D&D or whatever. And so like over the next 5+ years, I feel like we're going to see something. It really depends. I know they're also still in the production of their virtual tabletop thing that hasn't come out yet.
I would not be surprised based on some of the other decisions Hasbro has been making. Like, I would not be surprised if that gets axed. Like, because there's some people at the top that seem to be making some decisions that's like, they drew up a lot of hype for like new video games after Baldur's Gate 3, and they then like mid-development of a bunch of stuff, they completely axed the entire video game division for like Hasbro stuff and Wizard of the Coast. They after doing the movie, it did relatively well, and it's very well, like a lot of people love it and really liked it. It did very well movie-wise. They completely fired everybody in charge of like film production. They fired their film studio department. They routinely fire everybody right before like Christmas bonuses happen. Like they make a thing, everybody likes it, and then they gut the department. Yeah. Like that's just the thing. So I would not be surprised if the VTT does not happen.
Or if it does, it's just bad. It just comes.
It's not what they like. It's not what they showed at all.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like, I wouldn't either. Honestly, it seems like it feels like the company is like, it's like a puzzle box, and they keep like shifting and changing configurations right before they finish a thing, because it's probably because they're working halfway through a product and they're like, hey boss, this is going to take more time and money, and they're like, well, we can't have that, so let's readjust some of the funding a bit here and there, and let's try something new. And and I don't know. I mean, we could talk about how bad of a company WotC and Hasbro are until the cows come home.
This is the final stream. We got to get all the quota out. You know how,
yeah, it's true.
How pent up and like just sick I'm gonna get in the next few months.
But Bill Shepard here asked an interesting question. So what made the difference with the Pathfinder 2 remaster? I mean, I think it was the OGL was huge for people shifting attention, and Pathfinder was just the next biggest game. Mm-hmm. So the remaster coming out was definitely like a pretty big thing that I feel like now we're done with Player Core 2 and everything else like that. Honestly, I don't even know if it was worth a lot of the effort in like every regard. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that many of the classes kind of got a tune-up. I feel like some of them needed it, like Swashbuckler for sure. And, even Oracle, even though I don't like how they got changed up, at least Oracle feels playable to a lot of people now, which is good. But it feels like we went through a lot of hassle, and Paizo went through a lot of hassle for something that, one, they didn't even need to do anyway. Granted, they would say they're happy with at least doing what they can now to divert further away from D&D, which, you know what, fair.
I would argue, and I think it's just the smart decision, and I know they've said it as well. It is the absolute safe thing to do if your company that like you had a legal agreement with immediately prove themselves to be volatile and like untrustworthy.
Sure.
And have way more money than you to immediately make moves to separate. Like, and I think that is a good. There's a lot of things that we can like criticize, and I know we've had criticized, and there's some very objective things where we're like, there's some stuff that didn't fully pan out. There's the changes that like are objectively very good. Some changes that feel like they're a little bit for the sake of it, but I think can be debated are better. I know the wizard one is a little wonky, kind of, but
Yeah.
like I know the intention behind it, and I agree with the intention behind it. It's going to be more on the ownership of the player and GMs and giving them the tools to create something custom if they want, which is something I enjoy. Anything that is giving tools in the hand of player, I like. It's opening up spell books more, and I know some GMs really like the idea of crafting custom spell lists for their players, so that's always fun.
Sure. No, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that the changes are bad.
I don't think you are.
I'm saying the point I'm making is that it took a lot of development time, a lot of their effort and whatever. And what it ended up doing is it actually prevented people from hopping into Pathfinder at the height of the OGL, because people kept saying, well, they're doing a remaster, so I don't want to get in until the remaster is done, you know.
It put a block on people jumping in quicker.
Right.
And that is a shame for it. And I think that Pathfinder can do its best to slower and like grow its way up. Like, I think it's gonna still try to like grab some people back with some of the cool stuff it's doing. It lost the boom though, because that boom was perfect, and then there are definitely people who then were like, I like remaster stuff though. And they're fixing it. I don't want to learn a whole new game. And then there are people like, no, that's not what the remaster is. Please don't. And then they just weren't listening.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the annoying part, where you're like trying to help a new person get into a game, and they just don't have the context for like what a remaster for this is going to be. When it's like, no, they're just changing what things are called. That's basically all it is. And reformatting the book into something that's a lot better. I really like the book's new like format. Split between 2 books, but at least like the new books that they're printing are more readable. I don't like the old core book still. We've complained about that a few times.
Yeah, I think the new books are better and everywhere. Like I said, I'm fine with how it is. I think they've done pretty well. The problem is like, while Pathfinder did indeed really seem to explode during the OGL business. I mean, they sold out of their Guns and Gears stock really fast, and a lot of their core book stock as well. The choice to do the remaster suddenly then may be beneficial for them in the long term, but it definitely didn't capitalize and utilize the boom of, like, they could have waited a few years, for instance, grabbed all those people who are trying to hop shit from D&D and the OGL, and then did a remaster after a bit of time, so that people could get like in it and then be ready, you know?
Yeah, they could have maybe like slowed it down, and which would make sense. It just depends. Like, there might have been a legal thing behind the scenes where they might have had to do something like that.
No, they didn't have to, because the OGL license didn't actually get changed, couldn't have been changed, as many legal experts were saying, because like it was in perpetuity before.
Yeah,
like there was no actual need. They may have felt there was a need, sure, but that whether they felt that or not doesn't mean they had to, and they actually didn't. We know now. So
yeah, they definitely didn't have to, and I think that the mentality throughout all of it is super clear. Is the idea that they, and also like I want to see the I can imagine that what Dead Phoenix is saying, that they might have just been talking about idly, oh man, moving away from D&D would be a fun thing to do.
Yeah,
and then that happens, and you're like, okay, you know, that idea we've been like throwing around, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
I can see that.
In any regard,
I do agree though that there's a lot of like issues with throwing it out that fast, because we've talked with the Paizo devs and like how insane the release schedule was, and like their workload was, and it's super clear it took like a toll on everybody, and like with how hard they were all working, and so them finally being able to return to like a normal workload and being able to like relax a bit is great. And I'm very interested in seeing some of their design work when they have like way less stress looming over them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a thing of like, I think the remaster did well because people were tired of WotC more than anything. I don't think the difference is Paizo actually came out with a new game, or at least some big changes. And whilst doing that, by the way, they also released books with new classes and new stuff for players to do, you know, like, which D&D could never. So, like, if anything works, it's because Paizo just works. They're a company that does really, really well at the thing that they've been honing for the last few years, which is coming out with a shit ton of content for their TTRPG games. Which,
honestly,
you know, it's great. But I definitely feel like this year, because I have a very unique position of being a content creator in the space and doing a lot of videos and talking about a lot of the things, I get to see the trend over the course of the year. And we definitely, like, it was ramping up really good. It was just like, okay, we have the new GM core. That's okay, but that's mostly for the nerdy GMs. But then we have How the Wild. Okay, this is kind of cool. We got some really cool things in How the Wild, you know. And then we got like the whole God's Reign thing coming out. That's really cool. We got some really interesting adventure paths. Then we have Player Core 2. Everyone's talking about the changes. That's really, really cool. Then we got Tian Shaw, the Bolt the World guide, which was kind of interesting, but with a character guide was very, very interesting. And then it's like, okay, and then we have War of Immortals, which is a book that is half about a different mode of play that didn't interest a majority of people, it felt like. And when people hit War of Immortals, it tanked. And Divine Mysteries, which is a book that's more traditional, more like generally useful in a lot of ways and offering a lot of cool things, did okay, but definitely after like War of Immortals initially hit, a lot of the enthusiasm died really, really quickly. And I think it's just because, one, it was too much content that we didn't have time to digest and like wait to get excited for new stuff.
Yeah, it was like a month, and then the next month, and then it was so quick.
We had, over the course of like 5 months, they released 3 major books. It was insane. And that's mostly because of the remaster. That's because the remaster kind of released in the middle of their schedule that they were already kind of planning for. And it kind of just disrupted the flow, where a lot of the hype that could have gone for something like War of Immortals, where sure, maybe people didn't like the mythic rules as much, but it would have been a new book in the year that had new classes, and that was really, really cool. But instead, it kind of had to follow up that, oh, we remastered and made the classes better. So, like, War of Immortals, followed by Divine Mysteries, very much, we just didn't have enough breathing room to get to fully appreciate what they offered the game. And there was just less general hype overall for those. So, like, I feel like if they had pushed the remaster back 2 years, everything would have been better. But they wanted to design the new stuff moving forward with the remaster in mind. So they needed to create that context. And I know they were in a very difficult situation, and they didn't know what we do know now about how the legal part would all hash out. So
yeah, in that front, it feels like I wouldn't be surprised either if that was a conversation that was had. Not to make Paizo fanfic of legal conversations, but like, that could have been a conversation, and then the idea is like, this feels like the safer option because you're in that moment, like trying to think back of like the OGL when it was literally just happening.
Yeah.
And we now know in hindsight, like, yeah, 100%. But in that moment, you're like, okay,
Right.
so what do we do? And then I think at least I understand the idea of like we're going to be moving in this direction and like designing stuff with this intent. So the idea of like we're going to release content and then immediately remaster it would be like, God, that'd be so annoying.
Right.
that'd be obnoxious.
Yeah.
There probably could be methods they could do to make it easier on themselves, but I can at least think like slowing it down on the release would be a fair decision. But yeah, there's so many like issues just with how fast everything was happening, which is what happens when a company decides to out of the blue pull a fuck you move like that with the OGL. It just, people scramble and it's not fun for anybody. Like I think honestly, with the whole idea with like War of the Immortals not having as much hype and all that, I almost feel like right now they might be recapturing some of it, because you know I've seen conversely some of the stuff we've been noticing with War of the Immortals where it's like the Exemplar and like the Animus, people are like fuck yeah Exemplar, less people are like hell yeah Animus, and that's kind of it. And now we have people going crazy for Necromancer, and a bit if they're cool for Runesmith. And like I've been seeing for the first time ever, it makes me so happy, the Paizo new release cycle hasn't happened. And it's the first time where I'm seeing people try to do the like, this looks kind of badly designed. And then people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? No, this is fine. What? And like people I'm seeing, like especially like online, are like, guys, I think the Pathfinder like community is a little reactionary and just calls things bad off rip, and is too focused on meta Whiterun combats. And I'm like, oh my god, they noticed. They finally noticed. I've been making fun of them for so long.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, despite not getting the same amount of views that, say, Ronald or Nonats get in the community, I would definitely say that like a lot of the conversations we have on our channel, whether it's on our live or whatever, do seem to get out and people do seem to talk about it. But something I noticed that was interesting is now we're starting to see a lot more conversations around Exemplar, because people are now have had, over a month, not quite 2 months yet, to actually play it after it released like street date. And, I see people are starting to now like get different opinions of Exemplar, where in the beginning I was like, oh, Exemplar is cool, its multi-class is busted, but it's cool. And now a lot of people are starting to say like Exemplar is broken because they have like some anecdotal situation where there's Exemplar did what felt like a lot of damage in a singular round. And so it's like the problem with how this year ended up releasing was the new classes came after the players were already digesting like a bunch of 8 classes, getting their kits kind of told around with a bit. And so people just didn't have the time to really like get into it as much as they would if they had been waiting half a year for just new classes or anything. Like it feels like this year we had like 10 new classes release in a way, and I feel like it's something that there's just a lot to digest this year. I feel like next year will be a stronger year in general, because now we have everything. Now we don't have to worry about the remaster stuff, and now players can actually like sit down and fully digest what's in the game and get now more appropriately hyped for some of the new classes coming out, like the new Guardian and the been playing too many games lately.
And
Commander classes. The Necromancer was definitely really interesting, and you know what? I think the call to like announce the Necromancer and the Runesmith was huge. I feel like that was a really good way to carry Paizo in the mind of the TTRPG community moving into the new year, which is really important.
So. That was a really good timing move. Like that was clever. And also, I'm happy they did it because I got to see Necromancer and Runesmith. Because 100%, James, one class usually dominates over the other.
Yeah.
However, I like both. I like both a lot. And so true. We should have more classes.
You know what? Actually, I agree wholeheartedly. I would like to see a bunch of classes. Like, a lot of people would say that's a lot of content bloat. Yes, it is. In fact,
100%.
that would be super intimidating for a new player to come into a game. I mean, it's already intimidating when you tell a player there's 25 classes, not including the 4 that we currently know are in the works. Like,
I made a joke about that in my Pathfinder video, and then as I made that joke, they announced more classes.
yeah.
Like, that was the joke I then got to iterate on, was like I was joking, and then Commander and Guardian became a thing.
And what I and what I why I think it's good, and why I think it's definitely a very good thing if they make a bunch of classes, is Paizo's really stepping up and out of the general TTRPG comfort zone. They're playing with all kinds of weird new mechanics. I love the thrall mechanic. I think
It's so cool.
it's really, really cool. And I think a lot of what they're doing with their new class designs are going to lead to much more interesting, much more refined ideas when we do eventually get to a 3rd edition. So,
Agreed. Like, also sounds even better, like, James, that, like, if Necromancer feels that good in actual play, that's great tell, because I've only been able to read it, and my read of it is that it reads really good. Honestly, I wonder how much you agree, Cam. Like, just reading through these feel just out the gate some of the better playtests they've done. Like, at least, like, you're reading it and not having as many, like, ooh, that might need to get altered.
yeah, I think I agree. I didn't see any major problems with either of them. The only major problem I felt was that Necromancer really leans itself to, like, a very action-heavy economy. It doesn't feel like it gets a lot of flexibility. So that's the only concern. But at the same time, like, what it's missing, but I don't think it's bad to have a class that doesn't move. Like, when it's not moving, it's stronger because it gets to do its other actions. That's kind of what most classes have. But Necromancer is better because it has a bigger range that it can generally operate at with its thrall mechanics. And it's not like a ranger who, a ranger with a longbow never has to move in any combat ever. Because once they hunt prey, they double the range of their weapon, which means unless you're playing on a massive battle map, all enemies are always within your first range increment, essentially. And that's good, but the only thing you get to really do is shoot those people. Necromancer gets to do cool, like, thrall shit wherever they plop a thrall down on the battlefield, which is really cool. So I don't think it's necessarily bad, but after playing Magus, it does make me hesitate when it feels like a class is trying to do too many things in its one combat turn. And so it makes me hesitate. But, like, if we compare this playtest to, like, the last playtest, Commander felt great. Guardian was so iffy, and so many people were just not sure with the Guardian. They like the idea of Guardian, but some of the way it works just didn't feel like it would be very effective. So
it definitely was, like, of those two, the standout design-wise felt like Commander. And I'm saying that as somebody who is chomping at the bit to play Guardian. Like, I want to play the Juggernaut build Guardian so bad.
Right.
But, like, and Commander is not my playstyle at all. I'm not going to touch it. But mechanically, Commander is super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a blast reading through it. I was like, God, that's so cool for someone else to play with, like, the whole time. Like, that's really fun to have in a class where, like, I don't like the play style, but the whole time I'm like, God, that's so cool. They're cooking with this. Like, that, I always love that. I love that in a game. I don't have that super often. So when it pops up, I like it. And yeah, for, like, it's fun to have this for like Necromancer and Runesmith, where it really felt like these two classes, the issues with the playtest were less like issues compared to like where we read through Exemplar, and then you pointed out some of the feats of like, okay, this is gonna have to get changed. Like
Yeah.
this is a problem. Like there's not those moments, but it's stuff of like we have critiques of how the class might work. There are concerns with playstyle, like stuff like that. Because there's the idea, which I also completely agree. This is going to be a class that could be easily very action economy heavy. And then the question is going to be, when pointed out to Paizo, is that the intent, or is that an element that they're going to address? I can see it being something that's a little intentional, and then it means that you're going to have to be like more clever in your playstyle and in like feat selection. Is that going to mean like something else? Are they going to add more cool stuff that's going to make that decision harder of where to spend your action points and your feat selections? I don't know. Probably. I know their track record, but like, there's going to be a lot of cool things that they're going to do. These feel like the most like completed classes that they've thrown us at playtests. The actual only major critique I have is I kind of wish both classes had stuff where they could use their powers for non-combat things.
Yeah, definitely some more non-combat stuff, but that's not necessarily what you want to playtest. So like,
no, not in the slightest. And it would be something I point out like in really point as a critique, in the chance that like Paizo didn't have that and weren't really planning on that, and then I guess just might hear that critique and be like, yeah, maybe we could. Because I would love like some necromantic familiar stuff, maybe like a few fun utility thrall abilities like out of combat. That's not fully the intent of the thrall, but I'd love something adjacent to it. I would love some runes that are built purely to be used out of combat situations. Because I had the idea of a breach and clear like rune that is built for like damaging objects. And I was like, that sounds like a great idea. Like that'd be so fun. Let us play a tactical breach wizards in Pathfinder, which a game I got through the winter sale and is very good. That game's so fun. But like that'd be so sick.
And James, if that is true, then that's actually a bad lore skill. I mean, if you're fighting a bunch of undead enemies, yeah, and there's a lot of undead enemies, so I think undead lore is good. It's just like
there's just a lot of undead stuff.
It's just like, but that's the thing, is it deals specifically with mostly dealing with enemies of some variety or form. Yeah, there's so many.
That's what I can immediately see. Because God,
Sure.
it'd be so lame if there was skeleton lore, zombie lore. Like that would suck. Because I know there's already haunt lore, which that makes sense. I understand why that exists. That's separate. But like undead lore,
I think undead lore is perfectly fine. It's more like
perfect. That's great.
If that was being said in the response to like outside of combat stuff, it's like it's mostly just tangentially combat related.
That is the fault of that one really good Paizo book where they added an undead creature for every possible body part.
Yeah,
that's the fault of that book. So they made their bed. Pathfinder and Paizo can lie in it. I want a Nervomancer. Right. I agree so hard. I want to have like brain thralls, and I want a necromancer that is all focused around either electricity or charming enemies.
Murio said something very interesting though a moment ago, which was I'm okay with more classes, but I wish for a few of the non-core ones to get a bit more content first for my summoner's sake. I wholeheartedly agree. I do think many of the classes after after the advanced player's guide definitely need a lot of love, because when you just compare the sheer amount of options, it's definitely not even. The problem with that distinctly being, from Paizo's viewpoint, everyone is going to have core. Everyone's going to have player core and now player core 2. So like the advanced classes kind of got mixed in with the core classes now, which is kind of good. But the thing is those are the books that people are always going to have. And they're not necessarily always going to buy the extra books like Secrets of Magic, for instance, or Dark Archive. So when they're releasing new stuff like the Tian Sha character guide, for instance, they're going to release like new feats and features for some of the classes that people already know. Now, of course, Tian Sha character guide did have Magus and Inventor stuff, so they are kind of addressing that. But for many of the new books, they kind of always have to touch on the core because that's the book that is most applicable to most of their base. So it sucks, but they do know, and they are doing their best to pay attention, but it's never going to be even, and it's never going to be the summoner is never going to have as many options as like the ranger will, which is sad because I do love summoner myself. Also, the fact that of those classes, summoner is kind of the only one who hasn't really been touched at all. Like Magus gets some things here and there, but an inventor and gunslinger, but not really summoner.
Oh yeah, you know what? That's a great point. Like, well, also the fact that like, yeah, third party can do some really fun options. Like Paizo official stuff is great, but then making sure, you know, check out third party people, because there's some very good third party content out there. Definitely not indicating for one company in particular. But like, there is the real fun aspect of like, God, imagine how much smaller a page for like, hey guys, we made a new subclass for Ranger compared to like, all right, new Thaumaturge subclass. Here's the implements, and it's like Ranger. When you hunt prey, this happens. Thaumaturge, and then it's like a page and a half of implement bullshit.
I mean, kind of, yeah. I don't know. The implements don't take up a lot of stuff individually, but even then, like, that's fine if they don't get a lot of feats, but instead get new implements in a book. You know, just extra.
It's great. That's fine. It's not a negative. I just think it's funny that like it to point out, because it is important and fun.
Oh yeah, Psychic also hasn't really gotten anything lately either.
That's true. More Psychic, but like the slow increase of page count for classes is very funny to me. Just like as you slowly watch as each class takes up more and more pages because they get more complicated. It means the classes are interesting and designed really well. It takes more space to actually describe. But on the other hand, that's funny. It's like, it would be really cool to see like, hey, we made a new Ranger subclass, and you're like, ah, shit. How did you walk in the woods differently this time?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I totally see that for sure, James. But that doesn't mean it's fair, you know? That doesn't mean that, like, yeah, sure. It does take a lot more page space to add some of these things, but, like, people are playing these things, and those people should be heard, at least somewhat. But my core point mostly being that they're a company, you know? They have to pay to put ink on the page, and so they're going to make sure that they're going to get as good of returns as they can, and so they want people to be genuinely interested in what they're putting on the page. So it's a business at the end of the day. They do have to make those decisions for sure. I think James has a good point, though, that it does open up a lot of really good space for third-party content, and definitely it's something I've always kind of avoided making content on third-party content because there's so much core content, and especially like for other games, that's just like, do I cover some third-party content for more Paizo, or do I cover more like Lancer stuff? Because like my Lancer fans, my channel is the swimming pool meme. There's me holding up Pathfinder, and then there's Lancer drowning in the pool in the forefront, and then there's the skeleton at the bottom of Fabula Ultimate content. because I just haven't touched that in like months.
I want you to know that's the same thing for me and Trench Crusade. That's how Trench Crusade, all the subs for that react whenever I make a 40k or vampire video. I've had a few comments that are like, Trench Crusade soon? Are you gonna talk about it soon? And I don't find it annoying at all, because I'm very open about the idea of like, I even had somebody say like, hey, I want you to know you're up on the list to become like the next biggest Trench Crusade channel. You're gonna be the guy. And I'm like, one, I don't believe that. Two, I don't want to be that. The idea that I cover one game and one game only sounds like a nightmare. So no, I very much appreciate the sentiment. I'm very open about that. But that is exactly me with Trench Crusade, because there's just not a lot of stuff yet. There's not a lot of like official lore.
Yeah. It's something where I think Paizo's doing really well. And if you were to ask me, would I want some more summoner options or new classes, I'd always say new classes. But despite the fact I love summoner, genuinely, I get such gamer envy every time we play in my my fiance's game, because one of the players is a they're a Russian frog from the future, and they have a Beyblade, a giant Beyblade as their Eidolon
Based
that they summon. And that thing fucks shit up. That thing destroys. I think summoners are genuinely so good, because the action economy compression is so powerful. Like, a lot of people are really sleeping on summoner. I know a few of you out there really do know summoner, but like it's really crazy good. And you know, like, I do want more, and I think that we should develop a much stronger third-party content. I feel like a lot of people really are afraid to touch Paizo because the math is so tight, which I kind of agree with. But at the same time, I feel like you can get enough mastery. I mean, James right here makes third-party content related to Pathfinder, and it's been really good, you know?
Yeah, it's very cool. He has shown me stuff that I've seen and been like, I would play that. I've told him that directly. I'd play the stuff you've shown me, and I want to play it. So when a lot of that stuff drops, I will try to throw it at Cam.
Bill Shepard. What I really want from Paizo is for Paizo to update their website. Yeah, me too. Also, thank you, Ink Tinta, for the Prime sub. Yeah, by the way, you guys know Prime is free. I never say that. But thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot, especially moving on here. I also need to change I need to change my icon back, because we're no longer doing Mutants Masterminds. That was fun, by the way. I definitely will be making a video on that at some point.
Super fun game. It's a super fun game that we like our comments in our final 2 episodes are real fun in the way that's like this really just bleeds early 2000s like tabletop design. And it was something that I'm happy I was able to bring up on stream with it, is like, I can really understand, having played like these games, especially even more hammered in with Mutants and Masterminds, why so many games are shifting to simplifying their rules and their math. Like, I understand it a lot more, because I got into tabletop with that shift to like streamlining a lot of rules. And I've also, now that I've been a lot more just competent with tabletop, played a lot of those older games. And every time we go back, we have games like this where we go to character creation, where it's like, oh my god, jeez. And we have all these moments, and then it's like, I think there were probably a lot of designers who had moments like this and maybe tried to fix this for the future. I can see that. I can see the bones. It makes me sad that how streamlined some games have gotten. But like, I understand it more. It's fun. It's fun being able to make your own superpowers, but by God, does it come with a lot of problems.
Yeah, I definitely think, because another game, Zarek, who was in the chat earlier, don't know if he's still here or not, they have Indomitable, a game that I think is going to make a really good what's a good word for it? It's the same but opposite of Mutants and Masterminds. It's another hero game, by the way. I'll definitely be talking about on the channel. But Indomitable has a lot of the same like kind of choose your own power thing, but it's a lot more reduced and a lot more like balanced. And I like the fact that you can have both. I like the idea that you can have a game where it's like it's super crazy, like make your own power kind of broken system, and you can have a game that's like, okay, here's the same kind of idea, only a lot more balanced and a lot more kind of reined in a bit, so you can have a much more even affair for all styles of play, for all kinds of tables. Because
Yeah.
you know, it's like, it would be nice, honestly, it would have been nicer in our game if we didn't have to like monitor how well we were designing our characters, because
Yes.
that kind of became a problem during Mutants and Masterminds, and that's mostly because we just hadn't played the game before, so we
Yeah,
made
so
some
there's
mistakes.
not somebody telling us directly that we're making bad decisions. And like for a game that's like, or system itself that's too streamlined, like there's not like a core system itself that like every single aspect always feels like too streamlined, because I think there's always like push and pull for every game, because the answer is just like, oh, a rules light game, honestly, because the point of that is to be streamlined. That's intention. But there's like some examples. I mean, D&D 5e is a game that is meant to be streamlined. Like that's the point.
Kind of.
Like it's streamlined with like its actual core mechanics are pretty simple, and like there's not a lot of decisions you make, but like it kind of started that trend in at least like a lot of games that came after it. Like there's one example that I like, that I bring it up on my channel, is the shift from Vampire the Masquerade, the revised edition, to V20 to V5, because in 5th edition Vampire, the actual core mechanics of it are really, really good. Like they did some really good iterations on the core mechanics of Vampire. The thing that I don't like is they made character creation way worse. In Not in the way where their intention is to be like, we are weaker vampires, you are meant to play a weaker game where you were like smaller stakes and it's like personal horror. What they did is they took every aspect that made every single one of these kindred kind of unique with their like discipline powers, and they shoved them all into like these like big conglomerate pots and like mixed them around, which then removed a lot of individual identity from a lot of like characters. So there's not a great reason to be like, I'm playing like for example, one of my favorite clans, Clan La Sombra, they're just shoved together with Giovanni, which is a clan that just they both use the same discipline, but the same discipline now covers shadow magic and like necromancy, because they're both tied to the Umbra, but that's not how it actually kind of works. It's dumb and annoying. It just makes your character creation worse. And then a better example I can also give, I forget the name of the system, but I found it in person at Barnes & Noble when we were getting into Mutants and Masterminds. I found a game that is a Marvel version of Mutants and Masterminds. It looked like it played kind of similar, D20, and like ran very similarly. The difference is that you can't make your own powers. You're essentially playing copycats of Marvel characters. You just can take templates of all these pre-existing characters. And that's how it works. And it's like very, honestly, the system itself looked finely designed, but it just was a very basic D20 system with superpowers. And it's like, man, the simple streamlining of that and the removal of like you're making your powers took a lot of the fun and identity out of the game. Is it easier to run? Oh, 100%, I imagine. God, it's probably like a breeze to play, but there, like, you lose a part of the magic.
Yeah, you know, honestly, thinking it over, like, if we're defining streamline is you don't have to reach as far to get the rules you need. essentially. Like a lot of the rules you need are very like linear and close. I think D&D is definitely too streamlined, because my thought when we were talking about it was D&D is a super well paved road for the first mile of a 10-mile drive. Like
Yeah.
it D&D is so easy to run and play until you get anywhere. Then it gets more difficult because you just have to start making shit up because they just don't have the rules for it. And the thing is that's kind of the design. Is it's not that the rules are missing. There was no good crafting rules really, because they're like the GM gets to determine what the crafting is. You do what's best for your game. We can't tell you that. And that's what their opinion on a lot of things generally was. Now, of course, there were also some kind of systematic problem things, but like there's a lot of parts where like what they were saying was, if you're going too far outside of like the battle chassis, you're just making your own shit up anyway. So we're not going to make rules for that, because you're just going to make up your own stuff anyway. Which is not good because players don't know what the intent is. Like Pathfinder is really good because you can look at items at certain item levels and know generally like, okay, this is what an item at that item level is. So even if you make your own homebrew items, you have a lot of reference points to look to. So when you're kind of going outside of the framework, games like Pathfinder work better than a game that's like overly streamlined. And another game that like, I mean, if you play any of the Powered by the Apocalypse games or by the, oh goodness, what's the other one? It's Powered by the Apocalypse and Dark Hat's one.
It's Forged in the
Dark, yeah.
That's it. I felt like I was wrong, but
it's the system we're talking about. But yeah, they are designed to give you enough to fiddle with, kind of fidget around with, but the intent is you're telling a narrative first, and the rules are kind of like a secondary part. And so those games I wouldn't say are over streamlined, because that's not their intent. Their intent is you're telling a story, but we're going to give you some mechanics to kind of fidget with to actually make it random and interesting.
Yeah, because I like this is something I'm very aware and like cognizant of, because it's one of my like pain points with a lot of tabletop games, as I've been quite vocal about, is one of the things I get annoyed by, and it's the reason I hate realism and survival mechanics in my tabletop games, because I found very little that actually work well and are fun. I hate mechanics in tabletop games that feel like, wow, we really just spent 20 minutes puttering around a point that achieved nothing, or achieved like a thing, and that basically amounted to you saying the word yes. Like that feels dumb to me. Like I'm like, it's good. There are some mechanics and rules in games where it's like, this is getting in the way of people playing a game. Like you're destroying game flow because of like there's these rules and mechanics. And a lot of times I see this in games where people are being very particular with like ammo and carry weight and survival mechanics. I've been in games where they've tried to do this, and I've noticed this, and I'm like, I hate this. Because it's like, all right, now we have to spend the like 10, 15 minutes buying rations. Oh, we can't just say we have rations. No, we have to go in, barter for it, because yeah, we have to do this every time, which is like not good GM work. That's really what that is at the end. But there are actual games that can have mechanics like this. And then in streamlining it, you try to iron out a lot of things like that, where you're trying to prevent that, like your definition really was. And then the problem you get is when you go way too far, because every single time I was talking about it, the key kicker of a game that tries to like oversimplify and over streamline to the point where it's like a detriment is taking stuff and tools and fun out of the player's hands, like character identity, character mechanics. Like you can't play as interesting of a character because that would make the game and the building process a little more complicated. Or even like perceived complication.
And it's funny that you kind of mentioned that too, because like I do feel like though that adding some complication to that process is important for defining characters, which I think is really important in tabletop, because a lot of what a character is like, a lot when someone is like looking at a game trying to figure out what kind of character they want to play, what they're more doing is trying to define what their character is about, you know? And so they look and they see and they're trying to find like a power, a class, a skill that really like lets you do something kind of unique and interesting so that they can build around that. And so while I definitely think that there are systems that get in the way, like intentionally, it's like you find something really, really cool, but then you get suddenly bogged down by a bunch of rules like oh goodness, my brain has been so full of like baby stuff recently. I've been having a lot of hard time like retrieving information. The European fantasy techno game,
Oh, it sounds
Shadowrun.
familiar.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Shadowrun is one of those games where it's just like, that's really cool. I really want to be like this class. And then you start getting into it. And it's a lot. And some of them I struggle to make sense of because they're very complicated and not very well explained. Some people really, really like that. And that's totally fine. But what my major point is that a game needs, I think, to have some level of interesting different mechanics and stuff. Like I like how Paizo's been doing it. The thrall mechanic from the Necromancer is so character defining that when you read through that class and you see what it can do, boom, instantly ideas for how to make a character to do things, because the mechanics are the thing you interact with, you know. So I think that they're almost in a way, the game system has to invent reasons why your characters are interesting, because they can't trust players to just make interesting characters. Because I've seen that in a lot of games where the game is very open system. Like you can make a character who can kind of do anything if you just put the right skill points in, but it's so open and so ill-defined for paths and everything like that. People get lost and have a really hard time making characters. Where a game where it's like there's not a lot to it, but your character has some very well-defining traits based on like archetypes or classes or whatever. People are like, oh, I like this ability, I'm gonna make a character around it, kind of thing. So
yeah. And like because I see it's also pointed out in chat, like I think Pathfinder 2 he does it in a way where, because there's the idea with like streamlining it down, because Pathfinder's in a really interesting space where I think on the surface a designer, maybe even like a poor designer, is that you can look at it and be like, oh, this game needs some stuff cut out, like really streamlined. And it's like, no, actually, all the stuff here is pretty well laid out. And like we always have that problem, I say. But it's really the thing of, if you have a question of like how something is going to work, if you look it up, there's probably rules on it. Like there's an answer for you. So you just don't have that situation where the GM has to make something up. There's always a thing able to arbitrate. So that's like the difference. There's, I guess, streamlining in the way of there's just so much actual rules text, so there's always going to be a direct answer. Is there going to be like maybe misinterpretations of the rules through like somebody misreading it? Is it going to be written perfectly? That's where issues can come in. I don't know if that's a streamlining problem more than an editing and reading comprehension problem, but like that's always different, you know. But like Pathfinder exists in a different, like in more interesting space in that front. And I also look forward to the idea that maybe we're looking past a lot of streamlining efforts. And I look at this, Grant, I can't lay it all on Brotherwise Games' feet with the Cosmere RPG,
Right.
because I just know that they like to make weird, overcomplicated games because that's just kind of how they roll. But like the Cosmere game actually having like crunch to it, and them directly saying Pathfinder Second Edition was an inspiration for them, I was like, yes, yes, please. Thank you, because they kept saying it was like, oh, it's like D&D, and I'm like, please let that be marketing talk, please let that be marketing talk. And then it looked like it was marketing talk, and I was ecstatic. Oh yeah, like the Shadowrun CRPGs are very good.
Yeah.
Y'all check those games out.
No,
They're very fun games.
The hacker drone stuff, that was when we were doing our one shot. That was a nightmare. I had to watch videos and they still didn't make sense. So it's exactly that. But yeah, it's so the definition of streamline is to make things more efficient and what was it? I just had it. Because I feel like so to make an organization or system more efficient or effective by employing faster or simpler working methods. So you can argue D&D 5e is very much in the category of making simpler working methods. I mean, does the player get an advantage in this point? Yes, no, advantage, disadvantage. Done. It's not, that's worth +1. That's worth +2. There's no need to like arbitrate numbers. It's just a yes or no. Is it efficient though? Yes and no. Because
yes and no. Yeah.
It's like it's very, very efficient in combat, which is where a lot of the rules mostly gets in the way, and streamlining that is really, really good. But no in like anything outside of combat, and no with some of how the spells work. Some of the spells are very much inefficient, but that's not a system thing. That's a design thing. Like that's like they put a thing onto what should be a pretty efficient system. If Pathfinder 2E, we can definitely say it's very efficient, and I think it's very, very interesting how certain games, because like we just got done with Mutants and Masterminds 3rd Edition by Green Ronin Games, legends in the space, but the game is not very efficient because how some rules, like you can have a condition that means you have other conditions that you have to then go look at, which might, like a character being staggered meant that the character was dazed, and if they got staggered again they would go unconscious. But dazed also meant you were hindered in something else. So, like, it was just Matryoshka doll of different conditions. Well, Pathfinder doesn't have that. A condition is a condition. A creature is either concealed or not concealed, kind of scenario. So I think they've definitely streamlined some of it. But if you don't know the conditions, it becomes more difficult. And D&D has conditions too, don't get me wrong. But D&D conditions are simpler in scope, because concealed not only implies like the character is hard to see, but also that there needs to be a flat check to hit them, and in addition to that, other things apply to concealed, where like in D&D there's no concealed. Your character is invisible or they're not invisible. Like it's just that easy.
Pretty simple. Like there's just a lot of elements that are kind of like that.
So
and like the bit with D&D that I would say is like firmly in the yes category is the fact that when I've had to teach people how to play D&D, God, it was so much simpler actually, like explaining it and getting somebody to start playing it and like getting rolling. Because when you explain, I had to fix a lot of problems sometimes, because people would try to immediately overcomplicate like a brand new player, and I'm like, no, shut up, stop talking. And it's like, here's hello new brand new player, you just sat down for the first time. Here is how you play. If you want to do a thing, you are going to be asked to roll that funny dice. And then you add a small number. Congratulations, you played D&D.
Yeah.
That's and if you have to do another thing, I will ask you. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's that simple on the player side.
Yeah.
So and then once you get to combat, it's basically that, but you have like little bars on your page that are like, I want to do this, so you add this, then you roll this. Like, it's pretty simple. So if you explain it very easily like that, but boom, it's so easy to pick up and actually play it, which is the reason why it's been doing so well and has done so well for just ages. But yeah, that's the element where it's like firmly yes, but God, is it not the same for the GM?
Well, and also again, tabletop is more than just combat. So
yeah, exactly.
If we were to take it a little bit further than that aspect, then yeah, I would say D&D is not very efficient, and Pathfinder very much is efficient. So I think there's a lot of give and take to both games, but I feel like if we're doing the basic of basic things, then D&D is more streamlined. But if we're talking about the whole package, I think Pathfinder becomes Pathfinder's road may not be as well kept as D&D's first mile, but they do it through the whole 10-mile stretch, So you're gonna get there relatively easy, a lot easier than the D&D player is at the end of the day. So it's just it's really interesting. I really like a lot of the new design ideas coming up in the tabletop space. I feel like D&D's design can be implemented in a much better fashion with a different, maybe a dice system, because I don't think a D20 matches D&D, I feel like if D&D had smaller numbers, or just smaller numbers with easier to hit, I feel like D&D would be generally better for its core audience if characters just succeeded more often than not. I feel like that would just work better for its design.
People would be a lot happier for what they're trying to do. But man, can you imagine all of the branding that would be destroyed if they changed the D&D from a D20?
Oh yeah, no, they'll never do it.
That'd be funny though. They should. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, the D20 is such a curse on the tabletop space, because don't get me wrong, I think the D20 is genuinely a really good die for random application, but that's not for proficient application, which are two kind of different things. Rolling the D20 for what should be more random kind of events, I think provides a wide enough range of high and low that there's a lot you can do in those margins, I like how, for instance, Pathfinder does its levels of success based on, 10s, 10 above, 10 below, that kind of stuff. Because that takes the D20 equivalently and kind of cuts it into quadrants, where it's just all right, if you're going to get this section here, you're going to get below that range of 10, but if you get this section, you're going to be above that range of 10. And it makes it where it feels like the die is doing a lot of things, but it feels too random to, I think, adequately represent character skill in a thing. It does get better as you get to master and legendary proficiencies, because when you have those proficiencies at level, DCs become really, really easy and almost difficult to fail. But for a majority of the early game, it doesn't feel that way. And that's probably part design intent, but that doesn't mean that it feels good to play, And when you're playing a tabletop game, you're not playing a dude who doesn't know what they're doing. You're not playing Jimmy, who is the rambunctious kid in town and is going to be a great adventurer one day. You even by Paizo's stats, you're not a normal person. You're a somewhat proficient person, but being expert in a skill feels very 50-50 or at least like there's too much margin of error where it doesn't feel like you're actually an expert, quote unquote, at a thing. Yeah. And it doesn't feel good. So I feel like there are better ways of representing player skill, and the D20 is really good for something that's random, something where you can have a range of successes, because like you can't really have levels of success on like a D6. There's just every time you roll, you're going to get some different level, but like at a bigger die size, you're going to hit some of those levels more often than not.
And it's like funny because it's really like the fix for it in D&D that I've heard and implemented myself, and that was a pain point for the D20, is like, remember, like, a failed skill check doesn't mean you, the character, messed up. It's like there's other things that could have happened. Like, your attack roll means that another person deflected, or like something happened that ruined your lockpick, or like something happened that ruined your perception check, like that kind of deal. And it's like, yeah, like that works for people, like 100%. Like it can work recontextualizing like failure, I guess. But it still doesn't break the fact that at the end of the day, most D&D checks are down to a 50-50 coin flip.
Yeah.
Which doesn't feel good. Like, yeah. I don't like that, like, at all.
It's something where I definitely feel like there's better methods. Honestly, a system I've been kind of working around the idea of, I like building dice system where it's like you're not determining success with one dice roll, but more of the aggregate amount from multiple dice building up to like a success or not. So it's like, you need to get a total score value of 20 to succeed at this check, and you get so many dice to do it. If you're rolling d4s, it's not looking good. you're gonna be struggling to get there. Even if you're rolling good, you'd have to roll 5 nat 4s in a row. But if you're rolling like d8s, d10s, d12s, it's like, okay, you're actually way more likely to get there in just like a few rolls. And so it would become a thing where it's just like a player could technically succeed if they have like absurd luck, but more often than not, players rolling bigger dice are going to succeed more often at the thing in question. And you can make those numbers, like you can adjust the numbers how you want to make it where success comes up pretty regularly for certain die sizes over others. And you can really you can make it be something that feels, I think, really good, and also like it's something that builds up hype and tension as you're doing it, because imagine it's like you're rolling and you're like, oh, that was a really good roll. Second one, oh, that's kind of bad. I need to roll this number to succeed on this next roll. And it, like, you have that really hype moment that was built up to, rather than like, hope I don't roll a 1. that the D20 really feels like.
It really is just that, like, which isn't fun. It's real lame.
So I definitely think that we need to step away from the D20, but the D20 is so iconic. I don't know if we could, because the thing is like a lot of people don't care what works or doesn't work. I've learned through vibes that people don't care about how the practice of things works out. They just want to do the thing that they know exists and like is fun. Like a lot of people are like, I like the D20 because I like when I roll an at 20, I can kill God, and when I roll a 1, I blow up. You know, they like that random chance generation. They really, really like the idea of that until they roll 3 nat 1s and their character just went from being kind of cool to a bumbling idiot, you know? Which I've seen happen. Oh my god, I hate... Oh god, playing at Adventures League, watching one of the GMs there, he was very much into that, like, you roll well, your character's really good. You roll poorly, your character's an idiot. And I just, like...
Yeah.
Watching him break player characters down into, like, bumbling fools because the player rolled bad, I'm like, that's so not cool. That's so terrible to do as a GM. Like, don't do that. Don't make players do uncharacteristic things when they roll really low. And that's also another thing. That's also why I don't like how D20s work, because your character can also just roll really low for something they're supposed to be really good at. It's not just like you failed the check. It's like, I rolled a 2. I missed the check by like 8. That's a pretty bad roll. So how do you recreate that in tabletop? It's just like, well, you're flipping through the book to find the information you're looking for. You got a paper cut, and you just spent the next few moments like nursing this paper cut rather than looking into the thing. Like, a crit fail, I think, is fine in a system when you should have moments of, like, real random chance, right? Like, if tabletop was better at, like, separating moments of skill and proficiency versus, like, random moments that can really shake things up, like, that's, I think, something tabletop really should do, is implement more random systems and leave player skill to be much more consistently, like, good for things that the players should be good at, you know?
Like, man, you know, it's... The problem is the fact that these games are not using the best dice system that was ever made, the Star Wars Fantasy Flight one, because that game does crits in the best way possible. I adore how it works, because there's the crit symbol, and you have, like, well, you have your advantages and your critical advantage, like your ultra success. You have those 2 symbols, and you have the good version, the bad version, and they cancel each other out. So as you're rolling your big dice pool, sometimes you're like, ah, shit, there's a despair there. But then you're like, oh, wait a second, I rolled a triumph. And so, like, you immediately have that moment of, like, okay, dang, I don't get, like, this cool extra effect, but I just canceled out something bad happening. And, like, that's cool. Also, the fact that, like, I like that the crit system directly is like, yeah, triumphs only work if you succeed the check. Like, you actually have to succeed it for it to work. I like that everything cancels each other out in a really fun method. And then a thing that it takes, specific thing to note, when something bad occurs with your check, like if you succeed with disadvantage or succeed with, like, despair, it's not because, like, you are bad. It's not because, like, you suck. It's because the story is evolving and something is happening, because you're most likely doing this check, like, under stress.
Yeah.
And, like, that's how you do it. And, like, one of the best moments I had, like, exemplifying this was literally escaping a ship that we were being chased by stormtroopers. And, like, we were, like, hacking doors along the way, shooting. I shot at a stormtrooper. I missed with, like, a lot of advantage. So I added the story element, like, with my advantage points, like, oh, okay, I miss, but I don't hit anybody. I hit a steam vent, and it blocks their path temporarily, giving us, like, a little extra time. And, like, you have moments like that, and you're like, that's how you do it. It's so fun. It's all statted out. It's well made. Like, that adding that element to, like, crits and, like, crit fails, oh, it feels so much better. They happen a little more often, but it doesn't feel like you have, like, a 5% chance to become a bumbling idiot. It feels like the world is stressful and is coming to get you, or, like, sometimes you get really lucky, or sometimes you're a badass. Like, that's just how life is. It's cool.
Honestly, I'm gonna miss doing tabletop for a bit because
Yeah.
I do like these conversations. I think they're really fun. I watch, seeing what you guys have to say about various games and such, I think is always really interesting. And the channel's really come a really far distance in the 3+ years that we've been going so far. Some of you, have been here a long time. Some of you are much newer. But we always have people like consistently coming back week after week. People checking in on our live plays more and more often. Like, if I was even to look at our live plays on the channel, like Mutants and Masterminds, like, the numbers aren't huge, but the numbers are definitely bigger than they were for, like, the last new game. Like, the Pathfinder stuff did better in general, but, big Pathfinder channel makes a lot of sense. But, like the vampire stuff, oof, those numbers were definitely not nearly as good.
Oof, yeah.
And even before that, like, the Lancer stuff had some pretty decent numbers, but we're still not nearly as good as Mutants and Masterminds. And Lancer, I feel, is more popular than Mutants and Masterminds. So, the channel's been growing pretty good, and I'm very confident this next year we're going to see some pretty big things, I think, here on the channel. Like, I think the Cosmere RPG is going to be really fun. It feels like Brotherwise Games knows that, like, Pathfinder's in the room and are taking notes and are trying their best to, like, overlay that on the idea of, like, some of the D&D systems that people are very familiar with. And so the Cosmere RPG, I think, is just going to be really interesting. I don't know if it's going to be big or not. It really depends on content creators, I feel like, to generate hype. Because a lot of people now still don't even know that it's coming out. Like, I would not be surprised if of a handful of you in this chat right now don't even know what we're talking about. I think Draw Steel from Matt Colville has a chance to make a very interesting splash to get people interested in other kinds of games. I think DC-20 is similar enough to D&D that other people, like, will start liking the idea of, like, trying new game systems out. So, like, this is very similar. So we could probably learn this real fast, and that's, like, a pretty big step. Dagger Heart is going to be releasing earlier in the year, the Critical Role based game, and it has a lot of the same D&D appeal without being D&D, and in fact the system's very different. So we might see some really interesting things there, maybe. I don't know though. Critical Role is so fascinating in the space because it's obviously popular, but legitimately, I can't find people saying good things about Critical Role lately. Most of the people talking about it are all shitting on Critical Role in, like, every aspect. So,
yeah,
obviously people like it. Obviously they do. I mean, like, let's see, what was the last Critical Role, like, stream on YouTube? Let's see, is it videos? Yeah. So for a live play, their season 3 episode 117 is at 214,000 views. For that, a 4.5 hour live play, that's really, really good. The one before it has 356,000, but it had almost a week to, like, brew up. So Critical Role is still popular, but I've never seen anyone say anything good about it anymore, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's just the sad part where everyone's just very down to shit on it all the time.
It's a part of the certain part of the community that's like the thing they like. I using Critical Role and like in a thumbnail, instant like haters in the comments. It's crazy how much people don't want or just want to shit on Critical Role. So we'll see how Daggerheart really pans out. I honestly think it's going to be a pretty lukewarm response. I was a lot more hopeful before, but I feel like Critical Role appeals to a much more casual audience, and a lot of the harder core audience like either doesn't care or just actively shits on Critical Role. So we'll see. I don't know. I think it's going to be very interesting, to say the least. Also, Starfinder 2e coming out next year. A whole nother Paizo game for me to cover. Yay. I'm happy for it. I really am. It's just going to be a lot of work. The Sure Strike nerf? Was there a Sure Strike nerf?
Yes.
What nerf was that? Is it 2 actions now?
Let me find it. It's Livewire and Sure Strike were a bit hit by the errata.
Oh, it's now once per 10 minutes? I'm kind of okay with that.
I assume it's in the player core errata. There we go. The next time you make an attack roll before the end of your turn, roll twice, use better result. Attack ignores circumstance penalties, everything's the same. You are then temporarily immune to Sure Strike for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I'm fine with that, honestly. It's a huge advantage. And I mean, okay, let's be really honest here. It's kind of like the Magus easy win button. Just multi-class archetype into another spellcasting class that gets True Strike, and then just keep loading up all your extra spell slots with True Strike, so that when you spell strike, you just True Strike or Sure Strike into your spell strike, so that you have a really, really good chance of hitting very, very hard with a very powerful strike. Yeah, so I can totally see that. That kind of prevents some, I think, unhealthy gaming habit for sure. Though, conversely, it does really suck for martial characters or like Gish characters who wants to be more melee-like, and they're using Sure Strike to kind of make up the difference between their low attack score and their ability to hit.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's always just that level of thing where you're just... There's the give and take of it.
So, that kind of sucks, but I do think preventing something like the Magus from just being insane and doing butt tons of damage all the time easily.
The point that they're saying here on their blog is the spell can be very strong, with the reroll effectively making a much larger bonus than most abilities can grant. This benefit was usually in control at low levels when characters had few spell slots, but it could become disruptive and repetitive at higher levels on characters built to gain a huge number of copies of the spell and use it constantly. We've added temporary immunity to the spell with the intent that it can still be very strong and create tense moments, but there's little incentive to use more than a handful of spell slots on it.
Yep.
Which I like that idea of like, okay, we don't want everybody to fill your entire spell list with like Sure Strike. Like, come on, but because that's not the intent of the spell. But like having it there still with its effect, I would rather there be a limit to how many times Sure Strike can be used than the like actual effect being altered.
Yeah, I agree. And then what's Inner Radiance? Inner Radiance Torrent. I've been saying that one a lot. Do his God intend to take Investigator archetype? Yeah.
And then Player Core 2 has an update, but okay. I'm trying to find the Livewire change because people have been complaining about that. Okay, there we go. Livewire's okay, yeah, they fucked up. Livewire's damage increases far too quickly due to a typo. They changed heightened +1 to heightened +2. So they fixed it. They fixed a mistake.
Opinion on Wardens of Wildwood. What is Wardens of Wildwood? Is that a new... It looks like a new adventure path. Oh, is this the one with Tree Raiser? No, that's the fungus one.
Yeah, it looks like it's a trilogy.
Yeah, just
Hacked Breaker, Severed at the Root, and Shepherd of Decay.
I mean, I'm all for stuff like that. I don't know. I haven't had the chance. I mean, we've been getting a lot of wild plant life-based APs recently. Ah, I see. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly how I feel about it. I think it's cool. I do like plant enemies versus, like, another zombie AP. But to be fair, there's not a ton of zombie APs, but there's a few. And this one messes around with the plane of wood too, which I think is really, really cool. I don't know enough about it. I think it's interesting though. Gosh, there's a lot of really good APs. Your group dropped Wardens of Wildwood. I can't imagine you have gotten that far. Why'd y'all drop it? I'm curious. The only thing I can really imagine is that plant enemies have a lot of really annoying effects. Like creating difficult terrain, for instance.
I can see that.
Messing with the players, like, in any game, messing with a player's mobility is a surefire way to get that player pissed.
Yeah, I can see the enemies just becoming a nightmare.
It's not even that it makes it more difficult. It's just like, if it's just annoying to fight enemies because they're constantly like slowing you down or rooting you or something, that does sound really annoying.
It seems like on Reddit, at least, people, because I looked it up again also because I was curious if people were talking. I'm scrolling through and I'm seeing a chunk saying, "Oh, it's kind of fun." There's a couple that are saying that they don't like it, and some of it is that the story is a little too like railroady.
Yeah, that's what Patrick is saying here.
Yeah, I immediately saw a comment of someone saying like it's a lot of like the story is assuming the players are picking a very specific path. But then a lot of other people are saying like the story that's in there is kind of fun. Like it's not one of their best ones, but it is a fun one. Though people are apparently saying the editing is a little, at least for the first book, is like a little wonky. Like, but then after like book one, it gets a lot better. Like the first chapter, someone messed up the editing bad, and then after that, it picks up like a lot better. So that's the current opinion, is like these books swing from quality a little bit, from like the editing and actual like just layout wise. It seems like somebody might not have put stuff that should have been in there, like stat blocks and all that. So yeah, that is interesting. I it does not seem to be one that people are lauding as very great. The opinions I'm seeing are it's good and fine to, yeah, we dropped it. I saw a couple that were saying similar.
Yeah, so it sounds like a pretty mediocre adventure path.
Which is
Either
a
love it or
shame.
hate it. Not much more to say. Interesting. To be honest, I'm the worst person to ask when it comes to any kind of adventure path. I have a brain that works best on just homebrewing and making stuff up as we go. My brain has been very well orientated towards doing that very, very well. It's where a lot of my skill set lines. Following an adventure path is very rough for me because it's the stress of trying to divine the writer's intent for the story can be rough. And I also just don't like planning ahead. I have made improv my one and only real skill when it comes to being a GM. Planning things out is not my strong suit. Yeah, so very mediocre is what I'm taking from it. I think that's fine. Yeah, that sounds good. I know which ones were interesting. I think Kingmaker is a very interesting story built around really, really terrible subsystems. It's just not in a very great kingdom building book when that was supposed to be the thing it's delivering. So, there's that. And I know Pray for Death looks really interesting, but I've discovered that it's only 14 to 17, so kind of short, which makes me sad. I'm not too interested in the now couple of APs about being in a circus or some kind of performing group and in getting into some adventure hijinks. I find that just, I don't want my character necessarily predetermined for me going into an adventure. To some degree, yes, I would like to make a character who fits in the story, but when almost it determines their occupation to some degree, I feel like that's a little weird.
It's fun to have. I think it's good to have some APs that are built for built for something like that, built for a very specific idea and concept. We're hey guys, we have a couple APs set out. What do we want to do? Here's one that's more general, or we have the circus one and all that. And if your player's oh, the circus one sounds kind of fun, and because I can see a group being oh hell yeah, let's make a bunch of circus performer go into that. That'd be a fun make a bunch of connected characters. But then sometimes you're not in the mood for that. Sometimes you want to make a different thing. I feel that way at least. Sometimes I could be pulled into a game where it's oh, that'd be so sick, having the having a really strong core thing for it, and so it dictates what our start is. And then another game be I kind of just want a general thing so we can all meet each other and have a good time. But it gives and goes. It's better to have them, but having more general adventure paths is probably a better thing to do.
Interesting. Like I said, I'm gonna miss these chats for the next little bit. It's crazy. I mean, the only reason why we're not really having any more table talks is next week, day after Christmas. Alex isn't gonna be here.
Yep, I'm gonna be on a plane.
And then after that, it's just we're on baby watch. I can't be streaming and be oh no, my Suzanne's water broke. Quick, and straight run to the car, you know, like I rather be here helping her out and, you know, making sure she's resting easy and as stress free as possible. And also building the tons of baby shit we have now. I got like, we have a cradle or a crib now, and got a car seat and all kinds of things I got to put together and get squared away in our room.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I immediately thought of like that future of like, man, it's gonna be fun, and like the idea having a kid at some point far future. But
Yeah.
if my cat's still alive, she's gonna be the most jealous cat ever. Because she's the creature that likes to be carried like she's a baby.
Yeah.
I literally carry her around the house because it calms her down and makes her happy. And the other thing I was thinking is, oh man, she's gonna be so insistent to jump inside the crib.
Yeah.
Just so insistent, like, I want in there. It's like, no, stop it.
So yeah, things are getting crazy. We'll get back to it for sure sometime towards the end of February. I'm thinking. It really depends on how soon Bella's born and how having a baby even is, and how we're handling it. She could be easy. She could be very difficult. She could get sick in that time, and that could cause a lot of stress and problems. Hopefully not. There's just a lot we don't know, and that's fine. That's fine. I've come to terms about being a father over the course of the last 9 months. So we're ready, but definitely I can't be stressing about streaming and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So that's gotta just take a back seat for the meantime. But then we come in running, as you know, the year's gonna start off with like Daggerheart and a lot of other games that are gonna be releasing over the course of the year. Starfinder 2nd Edition is gonna be huge, and we'll probably get Battlecry as well at some point during the year. So we have a lot for the future of the channel. I still have many more videos to make. I'll try to do my best to get some out. I would have released one already, but the last 2 days have been pretty busy with like appointments and just trying to get stuff together. So I live streamed the birth while doing a table talk.
That's getting real content.
Yeah, we can do the first ever labor. Oh god, what are those streams called where they go for as long as possible?
Oh, like a subathon?
Yeah, labor subathons.
Yeah.
Susan has to keep it in longer for every donation. That's terrible, but funny in a very like cringy hypothetical way.
Absolute like awful content brain rot.
Right, yeah, exactly. No, well, and you know, well, there might be like a video and just be like, hey guys, just have, you know, just giving the YouTube a video so it doesn't like destroy my channel, sending it to the Shadow Realm, never to be seen again. I'm alive. We're okay. I don't know. D&D, Elon Musk. All right, algorithm, you happy? Goodbye. And and then disappear again for another month. I don't think we're honestly going to have that big of a struggle. I think it's going to be a little rough for the first few weeks, but I do feel like by the end of February, we're going to start getting into a rhythm with things. And
Yeah, I think so.
I think we'll be able to adapt, and you know, like our mothers are going to be here and helping out, so I think we'll be fine. But it's just the next few weeks, like we're going to be having appointments every week and all kinds of stuff. So and that's on top of Christmas and all that. We're just going to be kind of busy with just life in general. So it's gonna be good. But hey, Alex, you're at least not having a baby early this next year. So
That's true.
what are you gonna be up to?
Well, I I am gonna be just crushing away content-wise as best as I can. Granted, not for the next week because I'm gonna be gone.
Yeah, Christmas.
But exactly. But if you like good old lore content, I make that. It's Glue Boy on YouTube. It's linked in Cam's YouTube, but you can go check that out. I just put out a video this morning on Trench Crusade again, something to just chug away a bit during the break that I'm having. And yeah, I cover some good old games, mainly Warhammer, Vampire the Masquerade. Gonna cover some other stuff down the line. I got some videos on Lancer too, because we talk about that here.
True.
So there's some fun stuff over there to go watch.
Hope we all have some great holidays. Hopefully next year is going to be better for tabletop. I feel like this year was kind of a like Pathfinder, we were eating kind of good, but this year just didn't feel like it had enough hits for like tabletop in general. There's not a lot to be excited about beyond what was happening in the Paizo space. And even then, like War of Immortals kind of being the letdown that it was for a lot of people. I feel like next year we really need some bangers, and I think we got that. I think that's definitely in store. I think there's still a lot of really interesting conversations, and I've been in contact with some companies who want me to talk about their games, and I've been just trying to find the way to talk about them, and I think I'm getting closer and closer to honing in on that. And yeah, so I guess with that, we're gonna go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.